Good morning, everybody. My name is Simon Hamilton. I'm the Chief Executive of Belfast Chamber of Commerce, and you're very welcome to this morning's event. This morning's event is entitled Belfast, Our Recovery. And what we're going to focus on this morning is the report which bore that name, which was published by Belfast City Council back in the autumn. It was an ambitious vision for our city post-pandemic with a big concentration on important issues like digital innovation, connecting spaces and places, jobs and reskilling, and city and community regeneration. And to help us explore those themes and to go through the Council's plan, we're very privileged to be joined by Alistair Reid, the Strategic Director of Place and Economy at Belfast City Council, and his colleagues Cathy Reynolds, the Director of City Regeneration and Development, and John Greer, the Director of Economic Development. Now, I know that many of you will be very interested in what Alistair, Cathy and John have to say, and will have undoubtedly questions that will be raised by the presentation that they delivered today. So there is a question and answer function. It should be at the bottom of your screen. It'll be open to everybody throughout this morning's event. If you want to put any questions in that you have for the team at the Council, we will do our very best at the end to put as many of those questions to Alistair, Cathy and John as we possibly can. So please feel free to do that and please interact and give us those questions that you might have. So I just want to then begin by handing over to Alistair to start the presentation. Alistair, thank you very much. It's over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Simon, and thank you for extending the opportunity to myself, Cathy and John to come and speak to the Chamber membership this morning. It's always been kind of a key figure in my placemaking life that the relationship between the Council and the business community is extremely important. So in one sense you can look at it that the business community generates the money and we spend it, not to put too fine a point on it. So that kind of point of contact, discussion, negotiation is critically important to everything that we do in terms of placemaking. And I would just like to say that since Simon, you joined the Chamber, I think certainly from my perspective, that relationship is as good as any I've seen in cities elsewhere. So the relationship between the Chamber and the City Council, certainly in terms of my team of officers, is as good as I would want it to be. And so again, very much welcome this opportunity to come and speak this morning. I'm going to just give a bit of an overview of the recovery framework that you referenced. So in the last year, it's fair to say it's been perhaps the most challenging year that any of us have ever experienced in our working lives. Certainly is for myself. So the Council have kind of tried to address that in a systematic way. That's been obviously very difficult because at some points we thought we were in response, then we thought we were in recovery, and then response again. So very much like we're out of lockdown, we're back into lockdown. That's been challenging for the Council as for anyone else. So I'm going to say a bit about the recovery framework. Then I'm going to ask Cathy to introduce some of our work in terms of regeneration. So the city centre has been a focus for us for a number of years since the City Council published the City Centre Regeneration and Investment Strategy. And obviously that's not been plain sailing. So what's I think now nearly 2.5 years ago, we obviously had the Primark fire, which we thought was a challenge, and which really brought ourselves in the Chamber much closer together in terms of how we address that. And that challenge turned out to be a very small practice run for I think what we're doing at the moment. So Cathy will talk us through some of our responses and then some of the challenges in bringing forward housing development in the city. And then John will focus on some of our direct business support. So in the last year, we have dealt directly with literally hundreds of businesses and offered support, both advice and financial support to businesses. And And then John will major on the city deal, which I will reference as well as being one of our main programs for the coming years. So that's what we're going to do. Can I have the next slide? Yeah. So in terms of the recovery of the city, we have set out as a council a schematic, which I guess you would expect from us. So the spokes, there's five spokes to our wheel, which represent pillars, and all of this underscored by digital transformation and innovation. And what we have sought to do is build this on our existing commitments under the Belfast agenda. So it's not been a stop everything that we're doing, it's built on top of our existing ambition to grow the city in a sustainable and inclusive way. We've set out a programme of activities that we will drive around to bring us out of the current situation. So the first of these pillars is our city, how we use the physical spaces and places within the city to help build confidence. And that's now perhaps more than ever underscored by a concern around health and well-being. So we want to create particularly a city centre of good places with good connectivity, which offer space and place for people to enjoy a quality of life. And we also, that spreads out into our parks and open spaces in a much wider sense around the city, where we want to ensure that we come out with a cultural vibrance in cities and neighbourhoods. And this work's not something that we're doing on our own. We're obviously working very closely with the Public Health Agency, which we have done consistently around reopening of services and the provision of facilities and support. They also, one or two of the other kind of longer term things we'll do, I'll touch on. So the bringing forward of greenways in the city to encourage kind of walking, cycling, and a kind of more healthy outlook on life. I think the next pillar that we do need to refer to is our services. So as a city council, we do have our own core services to provide. And certainly in the very early stages of the pandemic, this was a key focus of our attention. So we lift the bins, we clean the streets, we do keep the whole clean and green agenda within the city. And I mean, not to put too fine a point, we also run the cemeteries and crematoria in the city. So these issues of keeping our core business services have taken quite a lot of our strategic level attention in the organisation, and we ourselves have had to refocus, redesign and prioritise. So, you know, we did from a clean and green, lifting the bins, cemeteries, crematoriums, really as our core services, and then underneath that, our business continuity plans focused on, for example, building control. We have certain emergency responsibilities there. So all these, there's a kind of hierarchy, and that gave us a core focus of running our business. In terms of our communities, I think what everyone's understood is that Belfast, like any city, has great disparity of wealth. So there are people in Belfast who have continued to do very, very well, and there's those doing less well by any measure, whether it's health, education, employment. And we've had to ensure that, there's a kind of certainly a UK recognition that these disparities of wealth and Commonwealth have been exacerbated by the pandemic. So a huge amount of our work has been carried out within communities, ensuring capacity building, and what would be normal day-to-day community activities have managed to carry on and function. And then, of course, we've got the economy, which is something that I think most of the people this morning are here to hear about. And I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, when furlough finishes, there will be a major further shock to the Belfast economy. And you know, we have to recognise that we do expect job losses and business closures at that point. And John will talk in a bit about how we've kind of developed some of our responses to that. So, having said that, the economy, there are growth sectors in the Belfast economy, and certainly working with our colleagues at Invest NI, we've seen a continued interest in investment in the city, and indeed I think about a dozen companies have moved in from the States over the last year. So there is still key interest. And yesterday myself had a meeting with a major Australian investment company who was seeking opportunity to put money into Belfast. So there's by no means, it's been no means all bad in that regard, notwithstanding it's been very, very taxing for some people and some businesses. And the final pillar of our response is the environment. And I think that anyone who's tuned into the current zeitgeist or the media at the moment, into global politics, will understand that we've talked about the environment for 20 or 30 years, but there is that sense that, but I guess one thing the pandemic has taught us is things may not always be the same as we thought they were going to be. And when people are warning about a climate crisis, then I think a number of people are beginning to think, well, maybe there's something in this time, and we really need to focus on that. So from a Belfast point of view, we know that if we want to reduce our carbon emissions, we need to focus on energy use in domestic premises and transport and travel. These are the two, this is measured, we know this from the numbers, these are the two big carbon footprint issues for the city. So there's a piece of work there that we need to be attending to. The digital innovation within this city is that overlying piece, and John will speak to that in greater detail in a few minutes. So can I have the next slide, please, Neil? So just to put some of that into kind of practical concern, public health, creating safe spaces, working with neighbourhoods, ensuring connectivity, building capacity, support, focus on the city centre, cultural life of the city, retaining that vibrancy and the cultural animation that Belfast so much enjoys. Unemployment is a huge challenge for us and going to be more so, and then city regeneration. And then some of the levers, which I won't talk to now because I know John and Cathy are going to pick some of these up. Can I have the next slide? In terms of investment from the city, I'm sorry you won't be able to read this, but we will make sure you get copies of these slides. Huge early opportunities for us investing in things that are already going on in the city at the moment. We've got a COVID-19 Capital Revitalisation Fund. A lot of that is going into neighbourhoods and communities. We have a £25 million leisure programme to bring forward still. Beyond the immediacy of some of the council's own investment, some of the programmes that you'll hear Cathy and John speak about in terms of regeneration in the city centre. In the medium term, we will be focusing on the city deal, and then just to cut this, as I said, John and Cathy will pick some of this up in detail. More longer term opportunities, we go right through to looking at major connectivity issues, so the very, very small things that are happening in the city centre, but then major Belfast-Dublin, the whole Belfast-Dublin corridor issue, potential enhancement of rail links there, and then the city deal programmes, the actual building, the creation of these innovation projects, and major tourism infrastructure in the city as a sort of what we would at this term say longer term, but being very much worked on now. And just on that, I will say something about the Destination Hub, which is a city deal programme, major piece of tourism infrastructure. We are now at a stage where, having had this as a gleam in our eye since the BCRIS, the City Centre Regeneration Investment Strategy in 2015, we now have that project taken to concept stage. So for those of you familiar with big construction programmes, we're now at RIBA 1, which is concept. We now have identified a preferred site, we have a funding package, we have architecture, initial concept architecture, and outline business case 1 has been submitted into the city deal programme. So we can fully expect a £100 million visitor centre to be in place by 2026. It will be in a main significant iconic city centre site, so it will be our biggest contribution to tourism infrastructure there. That's, I think that was mine. Neil, just check the next slide, sorry. Yep, and so some of the programmes there, I've probably gone on long enough. I'm going to leave it there with the City Deal, Innovation Zone, improving connectivity, digital innovation, levelling up and investment, addressing climate change, and further regeneration programmes being our big focus. And I'm going to hand over to Cathy and John to take us through some of the detail there. Thank you. And I think, Cathy, you're muted. Oh, you've got it.
Yeah, I'm on now.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Yes, and thank you for having us to speak today. And in the normal course of events, we can see people, but I'm assured that there are people out there listening and watching. So thank you. Alistair kind of given the overview of the whole recovery framework. So I'm going to try to pull out a few, given the time constraints, a few of the kind of the key elements to that. You're probably all aware of the various kind of strategy documents and policy documents that sit behind a lot of what collectively as a city we're trying to bring forward. Obviously, the Belfast Agenda, which is the vision for Belfast, and identifies the work. It's the first community plan, obviously, and it's identifying the vision and the work that and the growth ambitions of the city generally, and the local development plan, which is the 5-year plan, the spatial articulation of the Belfast Agenda. So that both of those documents, I suppose, are influencing and in terms of kind of the development and the regeneration that's coming forward and the growth within the city. Also picking up there in terms of the recent resilience strategy, which is about how we would seek to transition to an inclusive, zero emissions, climate resilient economy. And up in just in that top left-hand corner is the city reimagining, that cultural strategy about the cultural and the tourism and how central and key that is to the vibrancy of our city. And as we move on to the next slide, just Alistair had talked then about the Belfast City Centre Regeneration and Investment Strategy, which I'm assuming many of you may be aware of. And whilst the 2015 was a 2015 document, the council had brought forward and was subsequently adopted by DFC as their regeneration policy as well. A lot of what's in that is still key, and in fact, something probably more so than ever. So, I mean, there are a number of policies set out within that around employment, increasing the residential population, managing retail, the green walkable, cyclable centre, connecting to the city around. So, I suppose in terms of the recovery and work that we have been doing prior to COVID around that increasing of the city centre population, the bit about being really connected, walkable, cyclable, and connecting to the neighbourhoods has probably come much more to the fore now in terms of the challenges impacting on the city centre. Following out of that as well, there were a number of special action areas that have been created and various master plans, for example, in a Northwest master plan, which has shaped some of the work that's come forward in terms of housing and some of the other major developments in that area, East Bank strategy, and there's other ones there, the Greater Clarendon and then Lennon Quarter as well. So moving forward, please, Neil. Next slide.
Can you see the building Belfast one? Okay.
I can, yes, thank you. That's really, I suppose that's a very quick overview just of in terms of the cumulative amount of development, and that's that in terms of the city centre from the publication of the what we call BCRIS, a City Centre Regeneration and Investment Strategy. And I suppose from that what's clear is that there's been a lot of office accommodation, over 2.5 million square feet of office accommodation completed or under construction. A purpose-built student accommodation has really come to the fore. 1,500 hotel rooms completed. In terms of residential, what we've put up there, that there's over 5,000 residential units at various stages of the planning process. But as I'm sure everybody is aware, there's been very limited actual development within the core city centre in terms of residential. I think from 2015, there's something like 305 units have been completed. So whilst a number of the major developments and a number of proposals are bringing those forward to date, there has been limited residential, and that's a core focus for us as a council. And moving on, please, Neil. I know that the Chamber has run various webinars recently, and there's been a focus on some of the major investment schemes and major development schemes, so I'm not going to dwell on any of that. I suppose suffice to say that in terms of all of those major schemes, and there are a number of other developments as well as those ones on the screen, as they're in various stages of progression and coming through, the impact and the potential impact of those in terms of the economic, social regeneration for the area is massive. So a number of private sector led, public-private sector led ones as part of that. And maybe just touching on a couple that we are directly involved in. Alistair had talked about the Destination Hub and that £100 million visitor attraction that as part of the Belfast Regional City Deal coming into the core of the city centre. And then just on the right-hand side, which is where the council have a joint venture, that's the former Belfast Telegraph building, and the council are in a joint venture with LLP, with the private sector, and have put forward planning for that as well. So that's, I suppose, is looking to the future in terms of the scope of ambition and the development potential. And moving on. A quick kind of overview of this. Pre-COVID, in terms of fallen out of the regeneration and strategy and some of the economic work that John's also leading on as well, we have what we call a Future City Centre programme, and that was trying to pull together the various strands of work across the board for the future city centre, and particularly given the challenges of the high street and the challenges of retail. And it was about trying to diversify and bring forward that vibrancy and regeneration to the city centre, and to connect them with the surrounding communities. We put that into six pillars in terms of regeneration, connectivity, business and investment, city centre vibrancy, positioning the city to compete, digital innovation, and clean, green and safe. And I'm going to pull up a couple of things just in terms of that regeneration and connectivity piece, but we don't see any of these sitting in isolation. And there's a lot of detail that sits behind this, and we're having to repivot this, of course, given the current challenges and the direction of travel for a number of these. So in terms of regeneration and connectivity, I'm going to speak a bit then about the city centre living and that bit about connected spaces and places. But that connects right across in terms of the vibrancy and what we want to do to encourage more people to come in the city centre, to have that increased footfall and maximise our cultural and tourism offering, as well as supporting businesses and getting more people to live in the city centre, all underscored, of course, by that clean, green and safe approach, and maximising and developing the digital technology and innovation solutions to help do that. So moving on. And Alistair had shown the wheel, the recovery wheel, and that bit about our city and about safe, vibrant, connected spaces and places. Immediate priority after the first lockdown was about the safe reopening of the city centre and the arterial routes. And as part of funding that the DFC had provided to the council as a revitalisation fund, it was about putting messaging, communication, signage, the hand sanitisers, feet on the street, etc., just to try to help businesses post-lockdown. As part of, and I'm going to talk now in a little bit about that connectivity, but I suppose it was also about maybe fast forwarding some of the projects and some of the interventions that we collectively felt, because the Boulder Vision and the connectivity work was a previous subject of engagement, but just about being safe and healthy and how we use our public spaces as well. So, and the Boulder Vision, with the phase one of that, which was about a connectivity study, and that was about how we use our streets and places to make them attractive, healthy, vibrant and accessible. In the first phase of that document, and not the document, but the first phase of that, and it's been led by the council, DFI and DFC, and it came about following the bank buildings fire, and it's about reimagining the city centre, and looking to see how there's a number of themes that change within that, and envisioning objectives about, and there's some really what ifs, what big things, what if we were really bold and what our vision was, but also in terms of bringing forward maybe some incremental changes. And clearly that's, there's a number of interests to take on board there. We had Jacobs had taken that first phase for us, and they had led on the transformation of Edinburgh City Centre, for example, and it was about putting people at the heart of the city centre and connecting to the surrounding areas. And it wasn't all about the physical. Sometimes it was about trialing some pilots and some sort of softer interventions. We're at the second stage of that now, just in terms of the just completing the procurement, the tenders that have come in the back of that, and we are hoping to come now in the very near future to move to the second phase of that, which will involve extensive stakeholder consultation about how collectively we want to use our streets and places, and what's the art of the possible, and what will help businesses, what will help communities and the public. And it is about helping and getting that footfall and making the place accessible and more connected. So just moving on, please, Neil. Yeah, so just move on, but this whole concept of connected spaces and places and reimagining our public space. And on the next slide is an example that we had brought forward actually during lockdown, which was Cathedral Gardens, or Boys Park, down beside the University of Ulster. That's a pop-up park that was put in place and it actually was kind of led and designed by toddlers, but there was a play, and young children were really at the key and central to this. It's one of the key objectives is to try to get more families and get more people into the city centre. So a little snippet there we didn't actually realise, but it was, I'm not sure how, but it was captured by the Los Angeles Times and featured one of their 14 clever COVID-19 design solutions from around the world. But just to say as well that the council have committed now to taking this forward as a permanent space. This is a temporary 2-year installation, but and will be subject then to a further master planning and engagement. And again, in that theme of reimagine public space, you're maybe aware of a programme that we've been bringing forward called the Belfast Entries Programme, and that was about really seeking to make the city more connected, the core city centre, and more permeable. And it's about opening up and refreshing and really reinvigorating a number of our entries, and a lot of which have historical connotations as well. So that has been brought about in conjunction with a number of the businesses, and been really supported as well, because it is also the opportunity for more spill out space for more people to kind of just to connect in and around. And we're actually going on to the second phase of that, which is opening up some of the closed entries that are within the city centre. So there's a number of street art commissions, and again, I think it was good that we're able to support some of the creative artists and within the period of lockdown, because all this work was still continuing, and clean and green. And then in terms of the wayfinding element, there's a number of interpretive and business panels, and the intention as well is to have this as a kind of more formal tourist programme as well, with walk-in tours, etc. And a number of lighting installations and interventions. And on the next one as well, that bit about we have a lighting strategy, and that which completed recently, and some of you may be involved in that, because it was a lot of stakeholder consultation, and it was about the importance of good lighting, cohesive lighting in the city and leading into the city for both aesthetic reasons and safety, etc. But the entries actually have programmable a lighting, as does Cathedral Gardens, and as you know, the City Hall is lit up as well. So there's the opportunity to connect all of that and program it. And we're looking now as well at the possibility of doing that in the core of maybe of Donegal Square as well, and being able to potentially light up and program all that lighting, so if at civic events or at certain times that there's that consistency coming forward. So just in terms of just quickly talk about some of the proposals about that, again, reimagining the public spaces. And on foot of the money, that the fund from the DFC Revitalisation Fund, which also had included funding from DFI under their green and blue infrastructure, and we've been taken forward in conjunction with businesses and with the bids and with communities, etc., a number of interventions and proposals. This one is on Castle Place, just in front of Bank Buildings. It got planning approval for that new iconic kiosk structure there that's really going to open up out and a lot of spill out space beside it, seating planters, tables and chairs, etc. But also extending the pavement, so making it a wide pedestrianised area and a two-way cycle lane, which with the intention that would connect in with the High Street cycle lane as well. Then down in Cathedral Quarter, Union Street, and working with businesses down there as well in terms of bringing forward parklets, retractable canopies, lighting, planters, and just having lots more space for spill out, for public, for tourists, etc. Similar Warehouse Lane and Exchange Place, which was a kind of an entry style approach to that with street artwork, etc. Again, Linen Halls Street as part of the work with the Linen Quarter bid, bringing forward parklets, hospitality, spill out space, social hub on Brunswick Street. And then on Adelaide Street, we're working with DFI about the repurposing of some of the on-street car parking bays. And that was on that street, as you'll be aware, there's both businesses and residential. So it's about making some of that space, play space, green space, just dwell time. So working through that at the moment. And on the next, I want to think perhaps then we touch on we had recently launched a business and community cluster grant scheme, and again on the back of the funding from revitalisation, and that was on a citywide basis for businesses and community clusters to come forward with projects that environmental improvement type projects, public realm, that reimagining of the public space. And we had a fantastic a number of applications that came in on the back of that, and in fact it exceeded the funding that was available. So a whole mix right across the city in terms of parklets, environmental improvement schemes, some community gardens, walking trails, and actually some of the businesses and communities have come together, which was really good. A picture there of the Ormo Parklet, which I'm sure a number of you might be aware of, and that was a partnership project that we were involved in with a number of others as well, and that was probably one of the first parklets, and on the back of that there's a number now in train right across or proposed right across the city. So yeah, moving on please, Neil. Yes, again, this is just a little bit maybe in terms of developer contributions as well. You'll be aware that there's various developer contributions that are in place on sort of a number of developments within the city centre, and this is one of the first schemes that we've been bringing forward in conjunction with DFC to maximise and use the developer contributions alongside their funding, and that's about the 5C. So it's a number of streets in the city centre, College Avenue, College Court, etc., and about trying to make those more pedestrian friendly, as well as of course let traffic flow as well, and some images just down the side, and I know that's been out for consultation as well, and just to say that there are various proposals in the background being worked up in terms of how the other developer contributions are going to be spent, and they will be coming forward as well. Moving on, Neil. Yeah, so on one of the pillars earlier, which shown about the housing-led regeneration, and this is citywide. There's a real focus because the Belfast agenda had really one of the in terms of the growth ambitions was about how to really grow the population, have this 32,000 new homes, but also in terms of the city centre, really key. I think a consensus amongst a number of people that city centre living is absolutely crucial. There's limited core city centre living. There are a number of communities within and abound as part of. If you can move on, please, Neil. I think we have a map maybe on the next one that shows. I think there's in terms of that yeah, thank you, thanks. That shows the existing communities, and it shows some of the areas that are already that already have a strong sort of residential focus. But a real drive now to bring more city centre living collectively with partners and through ourselves, and I'll just talk to that in a minute if you want to move, please. Is that moving on, Neil?
Yeah, I thought.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Thank you, thanks. And it's about all housing needs, so it's, you know, right across all of the tenures is what we would like to see in terms of owner occupied, build to rent, affordable, social, rented, shared, whatever, intermediate. So it's just trying to get that whole mix across the board. And next one. I think, but possibly on, yes, on the what we are in the middle of just at the minute is looking at a city centre living vision. So it's about understanding the demand, geographic, the demographic, understanding existing communities, urban design, looking at the social and physical infrastructure that's required, and also then looking at the ability to looking at some of our own sites and some of the planning approvals, and also with the potential for repurposing some of the vacant buildings. The council have a number of assets within the city centre, primarily surface car parks and some other assets, and we have been doing a comprehensive kind of piece of work to bring all of that together and working with other public sector bodies that have primarily DSC who have land in the city centre, and with some of the private sector. And there's a number of clusters that we've been looking at and bringing forward. And without going into a lot of detail, but you know, we've land at Ormeau Avenue, Smithfield, which is the inner northwest, and some two parts. And once I get to the next slide, I'll explain that one. A Corporation Street with a car park down there at Exchange Street, but also had bought land adjoining that. And just across the road on Dunbar Street, a depot, car park, and some offices that we have, but also working very much with other private sector and public sector in terms of bringing forward a concept kind of regeneration framework about how some of that will come forward. Gloucester Street, an office site, and then on the Gasworks Northern Fringe, there's a master plan had been agreed, or through our City Growth and Regeneration Committee, but still to come forward for planning. This is one of the kind of first ones of those cluster sites to come forward in the inner northwest, just up at Little Donegal Street, Library Street, Kent Street. It's land owned by both DSC and the council. It's and three, as you can see, it's a fairly large chunk of land there. We are out at the minute with a development brief process to bring forward a housing-led mixed use and mixed tenure development, housing association-led development. So that's really about really drawing on the scale of the ambition to bring forward city centre living, but to say as well that it's not just in the city centre, that we're undertaking a similar exercise across the city, outside of the city centre, about the use of public sector assets to really try to accelerate the desire for increased housing. The last slide there really is just to kind of touch on that bit about a collective approach and that kind of public-private partnership, which we see has been absolutely key. And we have a renewed ambition, Team Belfast group of a number of public-private companies, and that's about positioning Belfast's attractiveness as a real estate investment location and as a regional city of choice by occupiers. And kind of 4 strands about a number of webinars pitching to investors, to to come to and to Indigenous businesses, and it's about living and working and investing and engagement and advocacy, research and media and communications. So it's a really strong joined up approach, just about trying to really make Belfast a brilliant place to work, live and play. So I think that's me on a quick whistle stop through. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Cathy. So I am aware that we're significantly over time, and we've sort of been talking for 40 minutes. We need to allow some time for questions. So rather than go through all of my slides, I'll just provide a very quick tour of what we have done in terms of supporting businesses in the immediate aftermath of the pandemic, and what our vision and our actions will be in the medium and long term. Neil, can I have the next slide, please? So Cathy has already talked about the context, and these are really the levers that will bring money and people to the city to fuel the medium and long-term economic recovery. Our community plan has a target of supporting 46,000 jobs. We were actually on target to hit that. We have a waypoint in 2020, and by that stage we had already created 19,000 jobs. We also wanted to attract 66,000 new people to the city and provide 31,000 new homes for those people, and of course attract more than 500,000 square meters of office space. Now, those numbers are not based in just some fanciful forecast. They are actually hard numbers based on the midterm economic forecast for the city. Now, obviously, in light of COVID, we are re-examining those forecasts, but we actually still, the early sight is that those forecasts will still be met with some changes to how the sectors that make up that growth will come. Can I get the next slide, Nate? I won't labor this point. We are in a very significant economic crisis, and while there is some optimism with regard to emerging from lockdown and the current restrictions, we do expect that those impacts on businesses will continue for a significant portion of time. Next slide, please. So just basically our principles for economic recovery. It is about inclusive growth. So it's about creating an environment for opportunities for all residents of the city. It is about driving green and sustainable growth. And it is about building resilience within our business community and growth. And it is about prioritization and normalization of the environment. Key drivers, a lot of which Cathy has talked upon, are the city deal, and in particular the digital investment within the city deal, which is going to bring £350 million of investment to Belfast. The city deal as a whole is investing more than 850 million. And that money can be levered directly to an economic response using some legislative tools such as developer contributions. We can actually see that money drive real job growth. And we are focused on investing that money so it creates a real structural change in the economy. Next slide, please. So our areas of focus are building business resilience to protect and create jobs, supporting social enterprises and cooperatives, revamping the business support offer, and investing in skills development for reskilling for employment, supporting tourism, supporting social enterprises, as I've said, and focusing on key growth sectors. I'm not going to go through the remainder of my slides in consideration of time, but in terms of the economic vision that we are presenting, if the housing retrofit and the growth in housing comes forward, that creates a massive opportunity for job growth in the city and the surrounding region. That housing, we hope, will be led by a move towards sustainability. We were heartened by the fact that the DFE paper on economic recovery that was released yesterday did specify a retrofit for housing. So again, we have to provide jobs linked to that, and we have to reskill our population to be able to access those jobs. And that is a significant task in itself, and that's very much what we're focusing on. There has undoubtedly been a structural change in the economy as a result of COVID. We have seen a massive increase in the adoption of digital technologies, with retail business, hospitality businesses shifting their businesses online. Now, that market will return to bricks and mortar to a large extent, but still there is an opportunity to be seized from that pivot in adoption and technology to drive productivity. Northern Ireland and Belfast has long lagged behind the UK in terms of productivity. So we want to really drive skills growth to push that productivity ahead. That productivity then can drive exporting and again, job growth. So we see housing being one of those investment levers Also, the growth in commercial development in the office market has ways that we can direct that money towards real job growth. The city deal itself is developing 5 advanced research centres focusing on cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and medtech. We already have a very strong cluster of companies and real talent in that space, and it is actually considered to be globally significant. That's evidenced by the fact that essentially cybersecurity investments from US companies in the form of FTI, we are the second most favored region in the globe. So we got to capitalize on that competitive advantage, which is why we're investing in the R&D infrastructure that will develop capability in those sectors. Now, we are also developing evergreen venture capital challenge funds, which will allow businesses, business starts, SMEs to use that capability and embed it in their business to drive growth. But the key challenge we have is, how do we ensure that when those jobs are created, everybody in our population can access those jobs? Belfast has long had a challenge around economic inactivity and educational performance, in that we have some people in the city who are really, achieving fantastic results in terms of education, being able to access all of these amazing opportunities in high-paid growth sectors. But we have a significant portion of our population that actually correlates with areas of deprivation, who do not perform comparatively with other UK regions and cities in education, and therefore cannot access these jobs. So we're working with the Department for Economy, Department for Communities. We are delivering employment academies, training, support, and we want to scale those up so that as these sectors grow and provide more job opportunities, all of the residents of Belfast can access. And we believe if we do this, we can actually create an inclusive economy for Belfast and the region that is really world class. And that will come through linking that economy through other centres such as Dublin, through the Belfast-Dublin corridor, and other centres such as London. We're very pleased this morning that the Khalifa review of FinTech in the UK has actually called out Belfast as being a key growth cluster within the UK. And that's a sign that we are a globally relevant destination for these businesses. But as I say, our vision is use our investment levers such as City Deal, housing, commercial development growth, the emergence of new sectors around green tech and so on, to develop a package of reskilling and business support to allow that to manifest itself in real jobs growth and good jobs, so that the city can thrive going forward. I'm not going to say any more because I have Simon, and I think we'd be happy to take questions. Thank you.
John, thank you for that, and thank you to Alistair and Cathy as well. And there was certainly a lot there, but I think it was really fascinating, and I think it was worth taking the time to go through in that level of detail, not only just to see the plans that the council has been rolling out and has for the future, but also to hear about that support that John mentioned that the council can offer. And I'm sure that I'm not speaking out of turn and saying that you will all be happy to if anybody wants to contact you offline afterwards, either through ourselves or directly. I'm sure you'd be happy to talk to people about any of those plans or that support. On behalf of Belfast Chamber, can I say that we're Belfast City Council is a hugely important partner for us as an organisation, and it's wrong to say we've enjoyed working together over the last year, because it has not been enjoyable for anybody, but I know the huge effort that the team at the council have put in, and we're really appreciative of all of that. And I was particularly mentioned too there for Cathy for muddling through with her broadband there, and showing the resilience that our city is renowned for. I'm going to try to bring things to a conclusion as close to 11 as possible. So we'll probably not be able to get through all of the questions that have been asked. We'll maybe take some of those separately and put those to the team, and they can reply later on. But in terms of there's a few things that have come through in the questions, and maybe touch on those. On the issue around space, and particularly around movement of people. That's one that has come up, including a question from our president, Michael Stewart, around, you know, the importance of space to the hospitality sector, and some really good plans there. Do you see that continuing? Do you have a strategy or a plan to continue to work with businesses within that sector to make the most of the space and maximize the space around their businesses? And there's particular interest in the Cathedral Gardens plan, and particularly in terms of drawing in more families into the city. I think it's often seen as a missing demographic from Belfast city centre in particular. And not only do you see solidifying that scheme in Cathedral Gardens and perhaps even improving it, but more of those sort of urban play park type of environments to bring in that missing but key demographic.
Shall I just fast and Cathy jump in? But in terms of the immediacy, we've been very clear that we need more outdoor space for the hospitality industry in the city centre and indeed on the arterial routes. So the first step of that was pavement cafe licences. Can we get them out as a matter of priority? And we did a number with no cost. So that was the fun. You know, can pubs, other bars, hospitality venues move out onto the footway, the pavement? And then the second element of that was the kind of parklet idea. So can we then spill over it onto the highway, onto the road, and take up parking spaces? Not to put too fine a point on it, that has not been an easy journey for us, because there is, as you know, unlike an English local authority, Belfast City Council is not the highway authority. So there is a kind of degree of institutional friction there with the Department for Infrastructure. But, you know, we've worked very hard to get them on board, and certainly there's a clear ministerial position on the direction of travel, to mix a metaphor here. So, but there are just, it's just working through some of these technical barriers that seem to arise here. So that's at the immediate level. Longer term, we have brought forward, as Cathy referenced, the bolder vision, which is to kind of try and look at how we can use the city centre in a different way. Now, it is controversial. It is about and if I start with, when people say there's no space in Belfast city centre, well, there's lots of space in Belfast city centre. It's just that we choose to do things with it that other cities have moved on from. So we still allocate huge amounts of space to 4, 5 or 6 lane highways in our city centre. We allocate an inordinate amount of space to car parking. Now, successful cities elsewhere have kind of got over that. And then just finally on this one, Cathedral Gardens is a great example of what we've done short term with bringing forward the children's play park. As you know, there is no play park, let's just do one. And that was out of the Primark learning. We did a very small version at Castle Place. But if you think of the whole open space area there, from the curtilage of the old Beltel building across to the new university, to the older university building, to the cathedral. And I'm going to be quite provocative now here. People talk about the setting of the cathedral. Well, it looks to me like the cathedral was built in a car park. Now, that's a choice that people, I know they use it, and it is money, and I understand that. But, you know, we have made collectively in Belfast, we make choices about how we use our space. It's not that there's no space, it's we've chosen to do things with it that other cities have moved on from. So that's the challenge. And we're working closely with business community, DFI, to try and change some of that.
Thanks, Alistair. A lot of questions have come through, and Cathy's presentation, you focused a lot on city centre living, and this is definitely an area which really interests a lot of Belfast Chamber members and us as an organisation, because we see it as something that is very much missing in Belfast. There are valid historical reasons for that, but we have seen other cities progress with city centre living at a much faster rate. The Deloitte Crane study recently showed that Belfast had 0 new starts in residential in the city centre in the last year, whilst other comparable cities had continue to pace in spite of the challenges that are there. So, and again, it's probably also one of those issues where, you know, there is a degree of partnering required to deliver some of this, and housing policy resides elsewhere, similar to your mention around space. But in terms of as a priority for the council, is it at the top of the list? Is it something that, as well as looking at kind of bundling some of those spaces together that the council owns to put those out onto the market, is it something that you think that, you know, the council and others can work on to incentivize that in the way that some cities, particularly in England, have done?
Well, we're looking to bring forward our own housing developments in what we call the inner northwest, so an area adjacent to Carrick Hill, between Castle Court and the new university development. And that's new for Belfast City Council to take such a proactive, pro-development role. So, you know, we took a decision a couple of years ago that we can't just sit back and hope someone else does that. But obviously that involves a high level of partnering with the Department for Communities and the Housing Executive. And there's politics to be steered through here. But I think what we would, certainly our kind of recommendation to the politicians and such, is that we go for a mixed tenure approach. So we should have all kinds of housing in the city centre, whether it's from social, affordable, the build to rent market, it has taken off elsewhere. And ultimately there needs to be what I would call swanky apartments in the city centre as well. And as we move towards the riverside, hopefully Belfast will enjoy the kind of premium on riverside living that other cities have managed to exploit. So it's housing in the round. The build to rent, I mean, I think people have got to kind of appreciate that 5 years ago there was no build to rent in Bristol, even if you had a housing market on fire. So it takes time, and this is it's a new investment class. It's being brought to the market successfully and at pace in other places, and Belfast will get there. It's just, I mean, this year's been a very difficult year for everybody, and when we were going from zero into a very difficult year, then it's not unexpected that we didn't manage to get things sort of spades in the ground, crane in the air on this one. But it will come, and you know, I think you mentioned the Deloitte Crane survey. Simon Bedford from Deloitte that presents that is very articulate in the sense of, you know, 6 years ago you didn't have 4-star hotels, we didn't have 2.5 million square feet of office, there were no purpose-built managed student accommodation in the city. So all of these things were kind of picked off almost one by one. Residential will come. The City Council is proactively developing that ourselves, and almost on a daily basis talking to investors, operators, providers of that class, and it's there. And just one more on this very quickly. The colleague that we don't have this morning, so I work with, there's 4 of us work as a team, Cathy, John, also work with Aidan, the Director of Planning. Through the last year, we've actually managed to get the Sirocco scheme through planning, we've got the Tribeca scheme through planning, and a number of other kind of individual build to rent developments. So there's no impediment to these coming forward when the market is ready. And we've got another scheme coming in at the moment on the, I better not say too much about it, you know. But so, you know, there is a constant movement through the planning side, which obviously planning comes before spades in the ground. All that work is happening at the moment.
Thank you. I think we'll just touch on maybe one last subject just before we wrap up. And there have been a lot of questions that have come through, and we're not going to have the time to maybe to touch on them all. But what we have been doing, we've taken a note of those, and you know, where there are, we will pass those on to Alistair and the team, and hopefully get some responses to some of those. But in terms of one of the things that we have seen is that Belfast's future as a digital and as a tech city, something you mentioned earlier, Alistair, is very, very clearly the case. John, in terms of support that the council can offer, practical support, obviously there's a lot of tech companies and IT companies in the city who are doing incredibly well. They're not in the city necessarily at the moment, they're all working from home, but a lot of businesses, including a lot of our members, are appreciating that whatever it is that they do, whether it's retail or hospitality or whatever sector they're in, that a digital future is part of their business as well. We're all digital businesses now in many regards. Is that an area in which the council can offer some help and support if people want to contact you and your team, John?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually have a program which is entitled DigiTransform, which provides one-to-one mentoring and actually financial support to acquire, equipment and the expertise to apply that equipment to help your business go online. But I think it is important to say that as part of the city deal, we are developing infrastructure around research. We are developing hard infrastructure in the ground in terms of developing a 5G test bed, improved comms with last mile fiber. And all of these things, if you like, create the environment for businesses to really be at that bleeding edge of a technology revolution that is already happening. What we are seeking to do then is ensure that those businesses know how to take charge of that opportunity and have a skilled workforce that are ready to fuel that growth. And that covers every sector. That covers retail and the whole, everything that Cathy and Alistair were talking about in terms of city centre living, and making the city centre really vibrant, green, exciting, open space to live. People will not come to work in places unless they are attractive places. Large tech companies or companies do not just look, where's the cheapest place, where do I get the most trained staff? It's more about, where do I know my people will be happy? So we're trying to create that inclusive environment for that. And there's just some questions I've noticed in the chat with regard to living wage and so on and how. So we do have a social value procurement policy that is in development. So we're looking at all of that. And the key principle about our medium and long-term recovery is ensuring that everything we do is absolutely inclusive.
Thank you, John. And I think that's a very important point around the programme of making the city more attractive. And obviously that is something that has been and needs to continue to be done in consultation with all stakeholders, including the business community, and needs to be done at a good, high quality standard. But I think there is a growing appreciation that, the fabric of the city, how it looks, how it feels, how it moves is hugely important, not just to bringing in footfall, but also to the city as an investment proposition, both in terms of property and in terms of jobs. So can I thank you all once again for your time this morning, for that excellent presentation. I think that will have given people there'll be a lot of surprises for people in terms of some of those plans and seeing that, and a lot of people, some of the questions have said very much looking forward to seeing the destination hub and some of those connected spaces coming together. So you have given people some hope that better days lie ahead for the city. Thank you again for all of the efforts that you have made over this last difficult year as a council on behalf of all of us in the city. And particularly again, just thank you for your time this morning and taking time out of your busy schedule to come along and to speak to members. Can I I'll just in conclusion point out that we will be sharing those slides with everybody. We'll also send a recording of this morning's session around as well, in case anybody wants to share that and the slides with any colleagues or anybody that they think might be interested. Can I thank Neil and the team at ND Events for helping us with this morning's event and making it run smoothly. Can I also thank all of you for coming along and taking time out of your schedules this morning to join with us. Our next event in our calendar is on the 9th of March, and for anybody who is interested by the reimagining of public spaces, we have an event entitled Creating Spaces along with Linden Quarter Bid. Cathy touched on some of the plans for that area, and if you are interested in seeing a little bit more about those, go to our website and register for that event on the 9th of March. So thank you all once again, Alistair, John, Cathy, and everybody in attendance for coming in this morning. Thank you, and look forward to seeing you again very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.